The fluorescent lights of Portland General Hospital hummed their eternal song, casting harsh shadows across the intensive care unit's waiting room. Rain streaked down the windows, blurring the city lights beyond into watercolor smudges. It was October in Portland, Oregon, and the autumn storms had arrived with their usual relentless persistence. Sarah Mitchell sat motionless in the uncomfortable plastic chair, her hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. At 34, she looked a decade older tonight. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her auburn hair, usually meticulously styled for her job as a middle school teacher, hung limp around her shoulders. She stared at the pediatric ICU doors, willing them to open with good news, though she knew in her heart what was coming. Her daughter, Emma, lay behind those doors. 7 years old, with her father's bright blue eyes and infectious laugh that could light up any room. Leukemia had stolen that laugh 6 months ago, replacing it with a hollow cough and a weakness that broke Sarah's heart daily. They'd fought so hard. Chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments that drained their insurance and then their savings. Nothing worked. Mrs. Mitchell, Dr. Patricia Chen, emerged from the ICU, her expression carefully neutral in that way doctors practice when delivering devastating news. She was young, perhaps 30, with kind eyes that couldn't quite hide her exhaustion. "Can we talk?" Sarah stood, her legs trembling. She already knew. A mother always knows. They moved to a small consultation room, sterile and impersonal. Dr. Chen sat across from Sarah, her hands folded on the table between them. "Emma's organs are beginning to fail. Her body can't fight anymore. We can keep her comfortable, but—" She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It's time to think about saying goodbye." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She'd known this moment was coming for weeks, but knowing and experiencing are different universes entirely. "How long?" Her voice came out as a whisper. "Hours, maybe a day at most. I'm so sorry." Sarah nodded numbly, tears streaming down her face. Can I be with her?" "Of course. Take all the time you need." The ICU room was dim, filled with the rhythmic beeping of monitors and the soft hiss of oxygen. Emma lay small and fragile in the hospital bed, her skin pale as the sheets, tubes and wires connecting her to machines that were keeping her alive. Sarah pulled a chair close and took her daughter's small hand, careful not to disturb the IV line. "Hey, baby girl," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Mommy's here." Emma's eyes fluttered open, those brilliant blue eyes that had always seen straight into Sarah's soul. "Mommy," she breathed, her voice barely audible. "I'm really tired." "I know, sweetheart. I know." Sarah stroked her daughter's hair, once thick and golden, now thin from the treatments. "You've been so brave, the bravest girl in the whole world." "Is Daddy here?" Emma asked, and Sarah's heart shattered anew. Michael Mitchell had died 3 years ago, a construction accident that took him in an instant. Emma had been only 4, too young to fully understand death, too young to lose her father. And now, "Daddy's watching over you, baby. He's been waiting to see you again." Sarah forced the words out through her tears. "He misses you so much." Emma smiled, a ghost of her old joy. "I miss him too. Tell him I remember the park and the swings. Tell him I got really good at the monkey bars. He knows, sweetheart. He's seen everything. He's so proud of you." They sat in silence for a while, the only sounds the medical equipment tracking Emma's failing body. Sarah memorized every detail of her daughter's face, desperate to hold on to something tangible when she was gone. "Mommy?" Emma's voice was growing weaker. "It's okay. You can let me go." Sarah's composure broke completely. She laid her head on the bed next to her daughter, sobbing. "I can't, baby. I can't lose you too." "But Daddy's waiting," Emma said simply, with the clarity only children possess. "And I'm so tired of hurting." Sarah lifted her head, looking into those beautiful eyes. Her daughter was right. Keeping her here, watching her suffer, was selfish. Love sometimes means letting go, even when it destroys you. "It's okay, Daddy," Emma whispered, looking at something beyond Sarah's vision. "You can let go now, too." And then her eyes closed, her breathing becoming shallow and irregular. The hospital's administrative wing occupied the top floor, far removed from the raw emotions and daily battles waged in the floors below. Richard Thornton's office reflected his position: expensive furniture, panoramic views of the city, and walls lined with awards and photographs documenting his 20-year career in hospital administration. At 58, he'd built Portland General into one of the most profitable medical centers in the Pacific Northwest. He sat at his desk that October evening, reviewing the quarterly financial reports. The numbers were good, better than projected. New efficiency measures had cut costs in several departments, and patient volume was up. His assistant had left hours ago, but Richard rarely left before 9. Success required dedication. His phone buzzed. An internal call from the ICU. Unusual, especially at this hour. "Mr. Thornton, this is Dr. Chen from Pediatric ICU. I'm calling about the Mitchell case." Richard pulled up the file on his computer. Emma Mitchell, age 7, acute lymphoblastic leukemia. He remembered the case vaguely. There had been some insurance issues months ago, claims for experimental treatments that weren't covered. His team had handled it by the book. "Yes, doctor. What's the situation?" "The patient is in her final hours. The mother, Sarah Mitchell, is here alone. She has no family support, no one to help her through this, and—" Dr. Chen hesitated. "There's something else. They've accumulated significant medical debt, over $200,000. Mrs. Mitchell just asked me about funeral costs, and I could see the panic in her eyes. She's been drowning financially for months." Richard frowned, uncertain why this required his attention. "That's unfortunate, but surely the billing department can arrange a payment plan. Why are you calling me directly?" "Because—" Dr. Chen's voice held an edge of frustration. "Because sometimes the rules don't account for human decency. This woman has lost everything. Her husband died 3 years ago, and now she's losing her daughter. She teaches middle school, Mr. Thornton. She makes maybe $40,000 a year. This debt will destroy what's left of her life." "Dr. Chen, I appreciate your compassion, but I can't make special exceptions every time we have a tragic case. The hospital has protocols for charity care applications. She tried," Dr. Chen interrupted, "3 months ago. Your department denied it because her income was $2,000 over the threshold. $2,000 for a woman caring for a dying child." Richard felt a flash of irritation. He didn't make these rules arbitrarily. Charity care thresholds existed for a reason. If they made exceptions, where would it end? "I understand this is emotional, but—" "Just come down here," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Come see her. Look this woman in the eye and tell her she's not worth an exception to your rules." The line went dead. Richard sat back in his chair, staring at the phone. He should ignore this. He had quarterly reports to finish, and his daughter Claire was expecting him to call about Thanksgiving plans. This wasn't his job. But something in Dr. Chen's voice, that raw challenge, bothered him. He'd spent 2 decades making decisions from spreadsheets and policy manuals, distance insulating him from the messy reality of what those decisions meant. When had he last actually walked the hospital floors, really looked at the patients, the families, the consequences of efficiency measures and cost controls? Against his better judgment, Richard stood, straightened his tie, and headed for the elevator. The ICU was a different world. The bright, sterile corridors of administration gave way to dimmer halls, the air heavy with antiseptic and something else, something harder to define. Fear, maybe, or grief. Nurses moved efficiently from room to room, their faces showing the exhaustion of 12-hour shifts. Dr. Chen met him outside Emma's room. Up close, she looked even younger, and absolutely furious. "She's in there," Dr. Chen said, gesturing to the closed door. "That little girl has maybe hours left, and her mother is in there calculating whether she can afford a funeral or if she'll have to cremate her daughter because it's cheaper." "Dr. Chen, I came down here as you requested, but I don't appreciate—" "Look at her," Dr. Chen cut him off, opening the door slightly. "Just look." Richard moved to the doorway and looked inside. Sarah sat beside her daughter's bed, her head bowed, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. She held Emma's hand, stroking it gently, whispering words Richard couldn't hear. Emma lay motionless, her breathing shallow, machines tracking her final hours. But it wasn't the dying child that struck Richard. It was the absolute devastation on the mother's face, the kind of grief that would never heal, that would echo through every day for the rest of her life. He saw her reach into her purse with her free hand and pull out what looked like bills, medical statements. She stared at them, tears falling onto the papers, and Richard realized she was trying to plan her daughter's funeral while her daughter was still alive. Something cracked in Richard's carefully constructed professional armor. He'd spent years viewing hospitals through balance sheets and efficiency metrics. Patients were admission numbers, cases, revenue streams. He'd forgotten they were people, real people, with lives and loves and losses that couldn't be quantified in quarterly reports. "How old is your daughter, Mr. Thornton?" Dr. Chen asked quietly. 26. Claire, she's a lawyer in Seattle. Imagine it was Claire in that bed. Imagine you were sitting where Sarah is right now, and someone told you that on top of losing your daughter, you'd spend the next 20 years paying off the debt from trying to save her. What would that feel like? Richard couldn't answer. He couldn't even contemplate it. "I'll take care of it," he said finally. Dr. Chen stared at him. "Take care of what?" "The debt, all of it. I'll have billing write it off completely. Charity care, compassionate adjustment, I don't care what they call it. She shouldn't have to think about money while her daughter is dying." "You can do that." "I'm the CEO, yes, I can do that." Richard turned away from the door, unable to keep watching. "Is there anything else she needs? Have we offered grief counseling? Support services?" "I don't know," Dr. Chen admitted. "Usually families have to request that. They shouldn't have to request basic human decency," Richard said, his voice harder than intended. "Make sure she has access to anything we can provide. Counseling, support groups, whatever exists. And Dr. Chen, thank you for calling me. I needed to see this." Richard didn't go back to his office. Instead, he found himself in the ICU waiting room, the same uncomfortable chairs Sarah had occupied for weeks. He couldn't explain why he stayed. He had every reason to leave, to let his decision stand and return to his comfortable distance. But he stayed. Around midnight, Sarah emerged from Emma's room, her face pale and drawn. She moved like someone sleepwalking, heading for the coffee station in the waiting room. That's when she saw Richard sitting there, still in his business suit, looking distinctly out of place. "Are you waiting for someone?" she asked, her voice hoarse from crying. Richard stood. "No, I'm Richard Thornton. I'm the hospital's CEO." Sarah's expression immediately shifted to panic. "If this is about the bills I'm going to pay, I just need time. I can set up a payment plan. I just haven't had a chance to—" "Mrs. Mitchell, please." Richard held up his hand. "That's not why I'm here. In fact, I came to tell you that the debt has been forgiven. All of it." Sarah stared at him, not comprehending. "What?" "Your medical debt. We're writing it off completely. You won't owe anything." She swayed, and Richard quickly guided her to a chair. She sat down heavily, shaking her head. "I don't understand. Why would you do that?" "Because it's the right thing to do," Richard said simply. "You shouldn't have to choose between saving your daughter and financial ruin. That's not why hospitals exist." Sarah started crying again, but these tears were different. Relief mixed with grief, gratitude tangled with exhaustion. "I've been so scared," she whispered. "I knew I couldn't pay it. I've been teaching extra summer school, tutoring on weekends, and it's still not enough. I thought I'd lose my house. I thought—" She broke off, covering her face with her hands. Richard sat beside her, feeling helpless. He'd solved the financial problem, but he couldn't fix the real tragedy unfolding in that ICU room. "How long have you been here alone?" he asked. My sister lives in Chicago. She can't afford the flight. My parents are gone. Michael's family? They blamed me after he died, said I distracted him at work, that the accident was my fault. They haven't spoken to me since. Sarah wiped her eyes. It's just been Emma and me for 3 years, and now, tell me about her, Richard said. He didn't know why he asked. This wasn't his role, wasn't his place, but something about this woman's grief demanded witness. Sarah's face transformed when she talked about her daughter. Through tears, she described Emma's love of books, her obsession with dinosaurs, her dream of becoming a paleontologist. She told him about Emma's last good day, 3 weeks ago, when they'd watched old Disney movies together, and Emma had laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. She told me tonight that it's okay to let her go, Sarah said quietly. 7 years old, and she's comforting me. What kind of world does that to children? Richard had no answer. He thought about his own daughter, safe and healthy in Seattle, probably asleep in her apartment right now. He thought about all the nights he'd missed with Claire growing up, working late, building his career. Suddenly all those hours seemed desperately wasted. Mr. Thornton, Richard, please. Richard, Sarah said, why did you really stay? You could have just had Billing send me a letter. You didn't have to be here. He considered the question. Honestly, I don't know, but I think I've spent too long seeing hospitals as businesses instead of places where real people face the worst moments of their lives. Your doctor reminded me tonight that there's a difference between efficiency and humanity. I'd forgotten that. Dr. Chen, she's been wonderful. All the nurses have. I don't know how they do this every day. Neither do I, Richard admitted. I sit in an office making policy decisions, cutting costs, maximizing revenue. I tell myself it's necessary to keep the hospital running, but sometimes I think I've become very good at forgetting that every line on a spreadsheet represents someone like you. They sat in silence for a while, two strangers united by tragedy and an unexpected moment of honest connection. I should get back to Emma, Sarah finally said. But Richard, thank you, not just for the money, but for being here, for listening. It means more than you know. After she left, Richard remained in the waiting room. He called his daughter. Dad, it's midnight. Is everything okay? Claire's voice was thick with sleep and concern. Everything's fine, sweetheart. I wanted to tell you I love you. I love you too, Dad. Are you sure everything's okay? Yes, Richard said, though tears were running down his face. I just wanted to hear your voice. Go back to sleep. I'll call you tomorrow. Emma Mitchell passed away at 3:47 a.m. with her mother holding her hand. Richard heard the activity in the ICU, the quiet rush of nurses, the solemn announcement that always followed when a child died. He stood outside, feeling like an intruder to this private grief. Dr. Chen emerged an hour later, her eyes red. She's gone. Richard nodded. How's Sarah? How do you think? She's devastated. But at least she doesn't have to worry about the bills. That was good of you. It wasn't good enough, Richard said. I've been thinking all night. How many families are in Sarah's situation? How many people are choosing between treatment and bankruptcy? Dr. Chen looked at him carefully. A lot. More than you probably want to know. I want to know. I need to know. Richard straightened his tie, a habit when making decisions. Set up a meeting with department heads for tomorrow. Finance, billing, patient services, social work. I want a complete review of our charity care policies. Richard, that's a big undertaking. It should have been done years ago. We set those income thresholds when? 5 years ago. 6. Cost of living has gone up, but we haven't adjusted. How many people have we turned away because they made a few $1,000s too much? I don't have exact numbers. Get them. Get me every statistic we have on charity care denials, payment plans that defaulted, families who couldn't afford follow-up care. I want to see what our policies have actually cost people. Dr. Chen smiled for the first time that night. You're serious about this. Dead serious. And Dr. Chen, thank you for calling me down here tonight. I needed to see this. I needed to be reminded what we're really doing here. 2 weeks later, Sarah returned to the hospital for a meeting Richard had requested. She'd laid Emma to rest in a small cemetery outside Portland, a beautiful spot under an oak tree. The funeral had been simple but lovely, paid for by the life insurance from Michael's accident, the only financial cushion she had left. Richard met her in his office, but he'd rearranged it. The desk was pushed aside, and they sat in comfortable chairs by the window, as equals rather than administrator and patient family. "I wanted to update you on what's happened since Emma passed," Richard began. "We've completely overhauled our charity care policies. The income threshold is now 40% higher, and we've added provisions for catastrophic cases that automatically trigger review regardless of income." Sarah listened, tears in her eyes. "We've also established an emergency fund for families dealing with pediatric terminal illnesses. It will cover funeral costs, counseling, and basic living expenses during treatment. It's called the Emma Mitchell Fund." Sarah gasped. "You named it after my daughter?" "With your permission. I thought her story should mean something, that it should help other families not face what you faced." "Of course," Sarah whispered. "Emma would love that. She always wanted to help people." Richard pulled out a folder. "There's one more thing. I'd like to offer you a position here at the hospital. We need someone in patient services who understands what families go through. Someone who can advocate for them, make sure they don't fall through the cracks. The pay is better than teaching, and you'd be making a real difference." Sarah stared at the job description. Patient family advocate. It was perfect and terrifying and exactly what she needed. A way to turn her grief into something meaningful. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. There's no pressure. Take whatever time you need." Sarah took the folder, clutching it like a lifeline. "Richard, why are you doing all this? I'm just one person. Emma was just one patient." "No," Richard said firmly. "Emma wasn't just one patient. She was a little girl who loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist. She was a daughter who told her mother it was okay to let go because she understood her mother's pain. And you're not just one person. You're a mother who fought for her child until the very end, who held her through the worst moments, who showed more courage than I've seen in a lifetime." He paused, looking out the window at the city below. "I'd forgotten why I got into healthcare. I'd lost sight of the fact that behind every policy decision, every cost-cutting measure, every efficiency metric, there are real people facing real crises. You and Emma reminded me. You both changed me." Sarah reached across and took Richard's hand. "She would have liked you. Emma always saw the good in people. I wish I could have known her. You do, in a way. The fund will help so many families. That's Emma's legacy now. That's her making a difference." Sarah started at Portland General 6 weeks later. Her first case was a single father whose son had been diagnosed with brain cancer. The family was drowning in medical debt, terrified of losing their home. Sarah sat with them, walked them through the new charity care application, and within a week they were approved. The relief on that father's face was exactly like what Sarah had felt that October night. Richard watched from a distance as Sarah transformed patient services. She fought for families, navigated bureaucracy with the fierceness of someone who'd lived through it, and slowly changed the culture of the hospital. Other staff members started following her example, looking at patients as people rather than cases. The Emma Mitchell Fund grew, funded by donations from the community and hospital staff. Within a year, it had helped 30 families, covering funeral costs, providing counseling, and giving families the breathing room to grieve without financial panic. Richard changed too. He left the office earlier, spent more time on the hospital floors, knew nurses and patients by name. He visited his daughter more often, rebuilt their relationship, and learned to prioritize connection over career advancement. The quarterly reports still mattered, but they were no longer the only thing that mattered. 1 year after Emma's death, Sarah and Richard stood in the hospital lobby as they unveiled a plaque for the Emma Mitchell Fund. Sarah's hands shook as she read the inscription. In memory of Emma Mitchell, who taught us that compassion cannot wait, that dignity costs nothing, and that every patient deserves to be seen, heard, and valued. She'd be proud, Richard said quietly. She'd be embarrassed by the attention, Sarah corrected with a sad smile. But yes, she'd be proud. Thank you, Richard, for everything. Thank you, Richard replied, for reminding me what really matters, for showing me that sometimes the most important thing we can do is just be human. As hospital staff and community members gathered to commemorate the fund, Richard thought about that October night, about a little girl's final words. It's okay, Daddy, you can let go now. Emma had been talking to her father, but maybe she'd been talking to all of them, letting go of the things that don't matter, the policies that prioritize profit over people, the distance that makes cruelty easier. Emma's story didn't end in that ICU room. It rippled outward, changing policies, changing people, creating waves of compassion that would touch families for years to come. One little girl who loved dinosaurs and wanted to be a paleontologist had restructured how an entire hospital thought about patient care. That night, Richard went home early. He called Claire and talked for an hour about nothing important, everything important. He made plans to visit Seattle the following weekend, and he kept on his desk a small toy dinosaur that Sarah had given him, one that had belonged to Emma. It reminded him every day that behind every policy decision, every budget cut, every efficiency measure, there were real people, real families, real children who deserved better than to be reduced to line items on a spreadsheet. Emma Mitchell had taught them all one final lesson, that sometimes changing everything starts with simply choosing to see someone, really see them, in their darkest moment, and that choosing compassion over convenience is never wrong. It's a lesson Richard Thornton would carry for the rest of his career, and one that would save countless families from the nightmare Sarah had endured, all because a 7-year-old girl whispered goodbye and a CEO chose to listen.